Hi, my name is Venus O'Hara and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about language learning. Oh my god. Someone wrote to me the other day and they had seen my video about how I learned Spanish in 3 months. And if you're curious about that, I'm going to leave the link in the description below. And they asked me for some more language tips or tips on learning a language. So here are my tips that I've just written down here. I speak, I'm native English obviously, and I speak French, Spanish, Catalan, and now I am learning German. So yeah, I'm definitely a language student, and I'm also a qualified English teacher, so I understand it from both perspectives really, the teaching side and the student side. And also I developed my own English learning method called English for Perverts, which is so much fun. It's a method that involves using sexual vocabulary to learn grammar. So that's so cool. Anyway, I wanted to share today some of my tips on learning a language. So I have approached the different languages I speak in very different ways. But something I have done with all of them is that I've lived in the country, and that has got to be the number one, the best way to learn a language, because I remember when I learnt French. I knew French before I went to live in France, but all of the years I'd been learning, it was like, but then you live there and it goes boom, within the first few months. It's quite incredible. However, there are people who remain in expat circles and they never ever evolve. I know so many people, even in my time in Paris and here in Barcelona, people who can't even phone up their electricity company to complain about a bill or something. They just can't do basic things like that. And I just think, how can you go about life like that? Or people who can't help their kids with their homework because they don't speak the language. I don't know. But I think you have to have passion and the desire to learn. That's the most important thing, really. You can't just treat it as an obligation or as something that you just think, oh, you'll do it tomorrow, or it's not important. Because I think a lot of people that I know who don't actually learn Spanish, or the ones who didn't learn French when I was living in France, were the people who actually didn't need it in their day-to-day jobs, for example. So they had to really make a real effort to learn, because they didn't feel as though they needed it enough to get by. So I think that's a mistake. I think people should really make it a priority, because the longer you leave it, the harder it is. So here are some methods to, once you've got the passion and the desire and the willpower to do it, then one thing that I love personally passive learning. For example, I used to love having post-it notes all around my apartment with vocabulary. And also in the past I used to live with a guy who was learning English, and I used to help him with these post-it notes all over the house. I think it's an excellent way to learn passively, and after a while you can take the post-its away and then put them in different places, or make sure you learn them and add more vocabulary. And but another thing about writing down, it's very important. When you write a word down, you have much more chance of actually remembering it. And something I've always done when I've been learning languages is I've always carried a notebook with me, and I've written down vocabulary, because it's like especially when you're living in the country, it's like shortwave radio. You notice some words, and as you learn more and more, you're kind of tuning in, and you recognize more and more and more words, main words, then filler words. And there are words you might be noticing on a particular day, and you're hearing it all the time. You think, oh, what's that? Or you see it on a sign somewhere. So that's something I always used to do, is whenever I saw a word all around the place I used to write it down. I was very curious to know what different things meant. And so yeah, I used to have a notebook, and I didn't have any rules. It was just things that popped up in context. I would write them down. Or for example, if I had to do certain errands, I would just work out how to ask for certain things in shops or whatever, and I would write the phrase down as well, because I think it's really important to as well as having the actual vocabulary, whether it be a noun or a verb or an adjective. I think it's a good idea to actually write a sentence with it in, so that you know how to use it in context. I think that's very important. But you can just focus on vocabulary if you just want to have a very basic grasp of a language and not worry about grammar too much. And to do that, I remember I got this book called Palabras, Palabras, which means words, words in Spanish. And it was one of the best books ever, because I didn't actually take formal Spanish classes until I've been in Spain already for a year. So the way I learned Spanish was very different from French. From French, it was very academic, and then I went to live there. Whereas with Spanish, I just arrived in Spain, didn't speak any Spanish at all, and I've written 3 books in Spanish, and I've written 100 articles for El País, so I definitely, I'm very, very proud of my Spanish. I don't actually have any formal qualifications, but I know it's pretty good, so that's excellent. But yeah, vocabulary. So I got this book called Palabras, Palabras, and it was some nouns, for example. It was all themed vocabulary. For example, let's say there would be shops, all the names of different shops and different products and where you would buy them. And then it had verbs that were related to shopping. So it was really, really, really practical, a very practical guide. There wasn't too much grammar in it, but it was very, it was like logical grammar, logical vocabulary. So it was very easy to learn and to remember as well. Okay, next thing, and then to practice listening. I think it's a really good idea to watch films and series in the language you're learning, and I would avoid subtitles in your native language if you can. Well, obviously maybe at the beginning you might need that, but when it gets to a more advanced stage, I think it's a good idea to actually put the subtitles in the same language as what you're hearing, so you can really recognise more words then, because sometimes when you're learning a language it can seem like everyone's speaking so fast and you can't grasp anything. So that's something I would recommend. And also I would look for films or series that you're actually interested in, so you're curious about knowing what's going on and not just doing it to learn the language. And another thing would be books. I remember when I was learning French, we used to use children's books, because children's books are really simple, and also cartoons. They're really exaggerated, the vocabulary, the language, and maybe a bit slower. So that's something that you could definitely do. Yeah, that's kind of fun as well. And something that I have done a lot in all the languages I've been learning is language exchange. So I've done that with French, with Spanish, and with Catalan. And it's a great way to meet people who speak that language. And so you would meet, let's say, once a week, and then speak maybe half an hour English and half an hour the other language, or whatever language exchange you're doing, and also have your notebook there to note things down. And I actually learned Spanish that way. I used to meet different people every night of the week, and some people were more formal. We were talking about politics, and others was just out with drinks and stuff. So it was a really great way to get to know people. And also, if you live in a big city, you can find groups that do language exchange. I know that here in Barcelona there are lots and lots of them, and it's a great way to actually meet people as well. Okay, and then what else would I say? So now I'm actually learning German thanks to an app called Duolingo, and as I'm a qualified language teacher, and I've been a student for many years, I've tried many apps for learning languages, and I think Duolingo is absolutely amazing. It's so intuitive, and I feel like I'm really making a lot of progress with German, even though the German language does seem a bit daunting to me after having focused on Latin languages for so long. But I really feel as though I'm making progress. And it uses translation a lot, so I'm translating a lot of terms from English and words, etc. But when I was actually learning, or when I was on my course to become an English teacher, they always said never to speak any other language apart from English in the class. So it's very curious to actually be learning German from English, because that was something that was frowned upon when I was doing my English language qualifications. Yeah, so they are my top tips for learning a language. And also, if you can't live in the country, you can always do an exchange, something that's maybe for a week or a couple of weeks, a month, or even an intensive course. So that could be a very, very good way. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you find it very inspiring. And if you have a question about anything, then anything related to orgasms, sex toys, living abroad, or anything else that I talk about, then don't hesitate to contact me at venus@venusohara.org. Thanks for watching.